Welcome back, gamers.
Thank you for coming here again. I'm good.
I actually don't know what I've got today. I've got nothing lined up.
We're just gonna read some of these Squatch stories to start out with.
This one is
Witness sees yellow glowing eyes while four-wheeling.
the witness is just A, submitted by A on Thursday, April 29th, 99. All right, this is off Route 93 in Western New York.
Me, A, and my girlfriend at the same time were riding her father's four-wheeler through a forest near Leisure Wood, which is a campground in Western New York. In the past, younger children and adolescents, not excluding myself, have felt a menacing presence in the forest around Leisure Wood, especially at night, but we've always dismissed it as just the creeps or something of the sort. But after what I saw, I'm convinced that something odd lives there, or at least was passing through. While riding our four-wheeler near some abandoned railroad tracks, I saw a flash of black cut into the woods, estimated about 6'5", but I had no time to guess, really.
Okay, so why even go that?
But I dismissed it as just a figment of my imagination. Approaching about 9:30 and getting dark, we headed home, which involved going through a forest off normal trails. As we were riding, over the motor I heard a high-pitched whistling and a rustling not far behind us. We had to ride slow because we weren't on the real trail. And when I looked back, I had the impression that a large black bulk was chasing us. Then, the truly terrifying part occurred. I looked upon two yellow, glowing eyes. We hauled our way home, with her seeing nothing and me not telling her to avoid scaring her. I won't go back there. I'm not so sure that it was attacking. It may have simply been running us off, startled by our motor. I've never heard of anything like that in this area except in Iroquois legends. If it were my guess, I'd say this creature was traveling from the Tonawanda Indian Reservation to someplace more remote. Submitted by a witness, Tuesday, October 4th, 2005. This took place in 02 on December 21st in Niagara County. Mountain Road runs parallel to Route 31A and parallel to the Erie Canal, about 1/2 mile north of the sighting location. A large stone quarry operation is on both sides of the road. An area is generally farmland with considerable woodlots in general area. Nearest town, Middleport. I witnessed a Sasquatch at about 225 yards distance for approximately 15 seconds, while it traveled around 75 yards along the back of a stone quarry
Near Middleport, New York, in the fall of 02. Okay, this guy, there's a lot of repetition going on here.
I stopped there to look for a deer in a large field behind the quarry that are always there, and I immediately noticed when I exited my truck a dark biped moving very rapidly through a waist-high field of grass on the very uneven rocky terrain.
Getting straight into it.
It seemed to float through the grass as I could not see its legs due to the height of the grass it moved through. Immediately, I noticed that it was completely the same color, and it seemed to hold its arms at its sides as it moved very, very quickly from left to right. At first sight, I thought it was a girl with very long hair, but quickly noticed that it was completely the same color with no obvious clothes coloration and moved much too fast, although the distance I could not make out any actual features, and at no time did it look my direction. But I believed I startled this creature by pulling into the stone driveway, which makes considerable noise. As I crossed a path next to a cornfield and angled slightly away from me, I noticed that its
Gluteal?
I noticed that its gluteal area was somewhat lighter colored. The biped then moved directly into the standing cornfield and was not seen after that time. When I say traveled very quickly, I mean it was moving very rapidly, but at no time did it seem like it was running, as you or I would look if traveling at that speed, due to the fact that there was no discernible movement of its arms as it floated through the tall grass. I am convinced that this was a Sasquatch. I witnessed, as I have been, an avid outdoorsman since a very young age, hunting, hiking, and camping for over 40 years, and very experienced with animals in the wild, and I know what I saw that afternoon was remarkable. I was alone at the time. Approximately 6 p.m. with clear skies and bright afternoon sunshine in front of a biped, causing it to briefly look somewhat lighter colored in the front, though it seemed very dark and brown colored, but not black.
Okay. Wait, what? Follow-up investigation report by BFRO investigator Paul J. Matasia. The sighting occurred in the later part of September '02. The witness initially assumed the animal was human height. Just recapping it. This is a reported sighting 5 months later in '03, approximately 20 miles away in Cookville, New York. That's a real place. What? If you live around here, then you know right where this is.
Husband and wife see animal near garbage dump. January 15th, '03. Hi. In the end of Jan '03, my wife and I were spotlighting for deer and coyotes in Waterport, New York. We were driving my 4x4 truck through the apple orchards. The lane went through a large hedgerow with a small stream in it. When we got to the other side, we spotlighted along the woods. About 75 to 100 yards, there is an old spot where they used to dump garbage. There was something standing next to the old fridge. I have hunted these woods since I was a little boy and have never seen anything like this. Its belly was about the top of an almost 6-foot tall fridge. I know it was an animal because its eyes reflected in the spotlight. It looked almost like a bear standing on its hind feet, but there's no bears in this part of the state. As we sat there trying to figure out what it was, it just started to turn and walk into the woods. Once we didn't have any weapons on us, we just got the hell out of there. Too freaked out to go back and look. Other stories, some weird noises at night. People say it's coyotes, but I hunt coyotes. I've never heard a sound like that. Between 2 and 3 in the morning.
Wait, follow up. Wait, this is so sick. Paul J. Mataja at it again. Spoke with the witness by telephone.
He grew up in the area and knows it very well. He cannot be specific as to dates, times, or weather conditions other than it was a very cold night. It was cold enough to keep them in the truck instead of going outside. They only caught a glimpse of the creature for about 2 seconds. When he shined the light on it, it turned and walked into the woods. He described the creature as about 8 feet tall, possibly 9 feet, using the estimated height of an old refrigerator for scale. The body was covered with hair that appeared to be 2 or 3 inches long. He does not believe it was a bear because black bears are very rare for the area he hunts in. Also, a bear, even when standing on its hind legs, would not be as tall. The creature he saw had long legs, not the short legs of a bear. Other times, when out hunting, he has heard old vocalizations, Other times, when he was out hunting, he has heard odd vocalizations, somewhat like a coyote caught in a trap, but with more power. This past hunting season, he had seen an eye shine that he could not explain. It was located several feet off the ground next to a tree. The eyes were not in the tree and appeared as if something else was standing off to this side. The witness does believe he saw Bigfoot. However, he is a bit puzzled. He has hunted this area since he was a boy and has never seen any tracks, especially in the winter, with snow on the ground. He speculated that Bigfoot may attempt to cover their tracks by moving through heavy brush.
What do you make of that? Wait, what? Most recent reports. Dude. Winter 2024, Genesee County. December 6th. State Route 5 and I-90.
Bigfoot snow tracks found by deer hunters 24 miles east of Buffalo. Submitted by witness Tyler Smith on Saturday, March 22nd, 2005. Okay, between State Route 5 and an I-90. This wasn't the sighting. Myself and my nephew found strange tracks in the snow when out deer hunting. There had already been snow on the ground and fresh snow had fallen into the tracks. They appeared to be very large human-shaped feet, and the tracks were bipedal with a stride of at least 6 feet. I have been hunting for over 25 years and have spent a lot of time in the outdoors. I've never seen a track like that before. My nephew and I got on the tracks and followed them for well over a mile before getting into the property line that was posted. Even if a human was sprinting, it would be difficult to have over 6 feet stride in over a foot of snow. About 10 years ago, in a piece of woods that I now own for hunting, I remember seeing a strange teepee-like structure. It was about 10 to 12 feet tall, made with maybe 10 trees and about 6 inches round that had been broken off. At the time, I thought nothing of it. and thought maybe it was from a weather event, but these tracks only being about 2 miles away as the crow flies, it made me really wonder what was going on. I have photos of the tracks if they would like to be seen.
Here they are. Damn, dude. This is fucking sick. What? That's kind of freaky. Dude.
The snow tracks found near Pembroke, New York are definitely not moose tracks. There are no moose on the western side of New York State. See images below. This one does look like similar. In the 4 images of moose tracks in the snow below shown, notice how much shorter...
What?
In the 4 images of moose tracks in the snow shown below, notice how much shorter the stride is compared to the stride between tracks found in Genesee County. For those who are new to Bigfoot research, the straight line tightrope pattern of steps is a distinguishing characteristic of many but not all Bigfoot trackways. It has been repeatedly documented since the 50s and was noted by journalist/author John Green and anthropologist Dr. Grover Krantz. Krantz suggested it must be an adaptation to walking in the terrain of their environment.
When did John Green... What?
My observations over the years lead me to believe the terrain adaptation is specifically the result of walking along narrow game trails in situations a staggered gait like humans do. Wait, what? In those situations, a staggered gait like humans do would cause you to snag your foot on nearby brush or step off the trail, which might cause a fall. You spend a lot of time walking along narrow deer. If you spend a lot of time walking along narrow deer trails or coyote trails, especially along slopes, you will notice your own adjustment to it. Your own gait will become less staggered and more like a tightrope pattern as you make sure you have each step land on the narrow trail. This becomes a bigger concern when you are running along narrow game trails. This element is visible in Bigfoot trackways also. The longer strides indicated faster walking or running. The short strides occur when the Bigfoot is walking slower. There's much more of a staggered gait, non-linear pattern when the Bigfoot is walking slower.
And then he asks Grok, are there moose in Genesee County, New York? I'm not reading Grok.
Public moose sightings, New York, 2014 to 2022. No moose. Well, is that none or at 1? Because, I mean, technically a moose could make its way down here. I did not know there was moose in the Adirondacks, though, honestly.
Wait, Matt Moneymaker is behind this? No way. No, it says Tyler Smith. Is this Matt Moneymaker from here on down? Yeah, look at that, though. Is it a moose or is it a squatch? You tell me. Wait, no, it says right here, follow-up investigation by BFRO investigator Matthew Moneymaker. Wait, Matthew Moneymaker took this photo? I've misled. I thought Tyler Smith took this photo. That is really awesome to know that Matt Moneymaker is active on the BFRO website this year, nonetheless, and using Grok. See, I thought that was an Obi-Wan Kenobi profile, but that's Matt Moneymaker's profile. Okay, that's enough, Bigfoot. Or was it like Matt Moneymaker, maybe Matt Moneymaker heard about it and drove to the area, and they were still there. That's my headcanon. Okay.
Posted on August 11th, 2015 by Joshua Tuttle. It's Tuesday again. Time for your weekly dose of the spooky, cold... What? Spooky... Okay. It's Tuesday again. Time for your weekly dose of the spooky, cold from around the web, the world, and life. Every week I'll have something new to send a shiver down your spine. This week's theme is train tunnels. I don't know what it is about train tunnels, but they scare the snot out of me. The idea of a shaft made by men burrowing deep into the side of a mountain just seems so crazy. Maybe it's because I grew up in the California sun, but looking at pictures of tiny ovals of blackness that lead sometimes miles underground doesn't make me feel great. Mankind was meant to stand in the sunlight, in my opinion. Or perhaps it was the story my mother told me about her foolish youth when she and her friends decided to run through a train tunnel near Indian Springs only to have an unexpected train chase them out. And they barely made it. It's just tunnels, trains.
What?
It isn't just tunnels, trains themselves terrify me, even though I was a huge train kid. I had just about every Thomas the Tank Engine book published, and I don't think I ever missed an episode of Shining.
Time station, what is that?
But there's something about locomotives that I will never be comfortable with. Perhaps it is their size, perhaps it is the low rumble of rolling inevitability. Sound of a train whistle echoing through a box canyon on a hot summer night gives me the heebie-jeebies.
I actually agree. When you're in a canyon or like a valley, it echoes off everything and it creates this like sickening harmony with itself, and it's like weirdly beautiful.
But it does give you like goosebumps, I swear. Maybe it's just me. The fact that my favorite place as a kid was Roaring Camp astounds me. But even more than a train locomotive is the tunnels that these locomotives travel through that embezzles this fear in my mind. In any event, trains and tunnels and media make me squirm. I once wrote a review for Unstoppable on Netflix. I remember the physically shaking as I wrote it. The original review is probably long gone. Good luck finding any specific movie review on Netflix. You can't even sort them. The Stand By Me bridge scene? Forget about it. I'll race you to Route 136 bridge. The Ghostbusters 2 subway scene? Nope. Someday I'll write an entire post about why subways scare me so much. But nonetheless, I absolutely loved London's Tube when I went there last January. Since it's Tuesday, how would you like to hear about some train tunnels from real life? First off, here in Spokane, Washington, there is an abandoned train tunnel that runs under my favorite cemetery, Greenwood Memorial Terrace. For those that don't know, this is the same cemetery that houses Spokane's infamous 1,000 Steps.
I think I've been there. Wait, hold on. Actually, no, I don't think so. No. This place is cool, but I have not been here. I am thinking of... Do you remember this place? I think the ghost of the Spokane 1,000 Steps just came into my computer and came my computer.
First off, here in Spokane, Washington, there's an abandoned train tunnel that runs under my favorite cemetery, Greenwood Memorial Terrace. For those that don't know, this is the same cemetery that houses Spokane's infamous 1,000 Steps. I do plan to do a post about this cemetery in the future, including my encounter with what we call the Shadow Monster. But for now, simply know that the 1,000 Steps are a local haunted thing, and that it's almost impossible to go there in October without running into a group of local youths bent on taming this local spooky rite of passage. Anyway, the tunnel. It was dug between February of 1909 and April of 1910, straight through, or should I say, under the middle of the cemetery. All those times that I'd walked through that haunted cemetery at night, I didn't even know that in addition to the ghosts of people, I might have to contend with the ghost of a train.
I thought he was going to say I would have to contend with there being living people below me.
Needless to say, I was spooked when I found out about it. I actually went out there looking for the entrance to the tunnel, even though they sealed it in the 70s. Well, they did a good job.
That is weird. I was going to try to go on here and find the train tunnel, but they sealed it? Here's a train track. Don't see anything about a tunnel. Wonder if anyone knows where it is. Oh wait, I'm so stupid. Right here,
You can't get into the tunnel today. I've read reports that people have tried to dig in from above, but I've never heard any evidence of that. I thought I read somewhere that the Chinese laborers died during the construction of the tunnel and were buried at the work site, but I haven't been able to verify it, though my research is ongoing. Consider the factoid an urban legend unless I post an update in the event that I ever find a documented proof of such. I'm not sure if this was a route used for passenger trains or not, but that said, it's fun to think that I'm not sure if this was a route used for passenger...
me.
I'm not sure if this is a route used for passenger trains or not, but that said, it's fun to think about passengers on the Tuesday Express wondering why they couldn't rub away the handprints forming on the windows as they chugged their way under the cemetery. Now that we have a cemetery for our ghost, how about a good old-fashioned train disaster? That's exactly what happened at the Cascade Tunnel in 1910, where occurred a disaster so serious that not only does it have a Wikipedia page, it caused the town of Wellington to change its name to Ty to get away from the association with the disaster. The original tunnel was constructed between August 20th, 1897 and December 20th, 1900 by the Great Northern Railway Company, same company that owned the Greenwood Tunnel. The original Cascade Tunnel passes through Stevens Pass, which stands barrier between western and eastern Washington state. The tunnel was built to improve the existing route through the mountains, which since 1893 had consisted of 4% grade and 8 switchbacks. That's insane that they even did that at all. Unfortunately, engineering compromises resulted in a tunnel that had problems. The tunnel collected smoke, which was obviously uncomfortable for the passengers. But more importantly, normal locomotives wouldn't have enough air to breathe. Due to the desire to reuse existing track rather than build gentler grade, locomotives would have to climb significantly until just before entering the tunnel so they could not accelerate in advance to clear the tunnel by momentum. This problem was solved by using electric locomotives. Within 30 years, the tunnel would be replaced by the new Cascade Tunnel, which runs 7.79 miles and is the longest tunnel in the United States.
Is that true?
The original tunnel is now abandoned, though it still stands. Part of it is caved in around 2006, blocking one end. Up until that time, it was the site of the occasional rave, as crazy as that sounds. No, that sounds
So sick. The acoustics in there would have been fucking insane. That's so cool. This
This is how one website describes the entrance to the tunnel today. And here's a picture. Fucking creepy and cool, dude. That's awesome. But if you really want an experience, you must visit the original Cascade Tunnel nearby, preferably at dusk for the full effect. Perhaps the creepiest location in America. Return to US Highway 2 from the new Cascade Tunnel and continue another 5.6 miles east along the highway. You'll turn left onto an unmarked road. Part of the old Cascade Highway and no longer maintained by the state, this broken concrete surface winds back west through the Ty River Valley as you slowly descend into thick vegetation. Eventually, you will take a right at the sign for the Iron Goat Trail, a walking path that parallels the original railroad tracks. Park in the gravel parking lot. You won't have any competition for a spot because no one else will be there. When standing at the informational center and large trail map, you'll have two choices. Take the Iron Goat Trail left or right. You'll want to walk left and bypass the orange plastic mesh that was put there to keep out thrill seekers. The area is infested with grizzly bears, black bears, wolves, mountain lions, and many other creatures of the forest, but the quick 0.3-mile walk is worth the risk. Around a bend, you'll catch a glimpse of the old Cascade Tunnel, the dark and foreboding western portal looming ahead of you. You probably shouldn't enter because massive flooding can occur at an instant and overwhelming the entire tunnel and creek bed thanks to snowmelts atop the mountains and a hole in the tunnel's roof, hence the orange mesh to keep people out.
Someone has that letter. Someone has that letter A in their bedroom or garage.
So, what happened in the original Cascade Tunnel that caused so many deaths forced Wellington to change its name to Ty? Snow. The train in fact cleared the tunnel and was sitting out in the open under the peak of Windy Mountain near Ty Creek next to the town of Wellington, which was essentially a Great Northern Company town. Snow was so severe that it could not be cleared from the tracks, and the train sat there for 6 days. Weather knocked out telegraph lines isolating the town, then the avalanche struck. Charles Andrews, Great Northern employee, described the avalanche as follows.
I can't fucking...
White death moving down the mountainside above the trains. Relentlessly it advanced, exploding, roaring, rumbling, grinding, snapping, a crescendo of sound that might have been the crashing of tens of thousands of freight trains. It descended to the ledge where the side tracks lay, packed up cars and equipment as though they were so many snow-draped toys. Swallowing them up, disappearing like a white broad monster into the ravine below. When it was all said and done, 98 people were dead. So, armed with this knowledge and a healthy fear of passages underground designed for giant mechanical beasts, what did I do? I hiked through a tunnel. It was a cool experience to walk through it. When you start, there's a tiny dot of light at the end that we mistook for a dim light that held by a hiker in the distance. My friends and I discussed it, and we were annoyed that we had to walk the whole tunnel behind someone too scared to do it in the dark. It was only after walking for half an hour that we realized the dot of light was the other tunnel opening. 2 miles is a very long distance when you're underground and can stare at it straight.
That is sick. I want to see this photo.
And finally, the ever awesome Aaron
Monka.
did an episode of lore about the train tunnels called the Bloody Pit, and it's every bit as terrifying as it sounds. In fact, it's probably the spookiest episode in the series. Have a good Tuesday, everyone. Keep above ground, and I'll see you next week.
Okay, that was interesting. I wonder if this guy still posts. Here we go.
There are some comments on this post. June 4th, 2023 at 2:13 p.m. Nayeli says, "Hello. I came here to comment a spooky occurrence I had while taking a hike down this tunnel with my family a while back, summer of 2021. I came to Washington with my family, and oh God, it was beautiful. It is. We rented out an Airbnb right next to the tunnel, so we decided to check it out, little knowing about the avalanche that occurred here in the 1900s, talking about that thing from up there. We didn't really think the tunnel was haunted. Once we started our hike into the tunnel, we felt a really cold breeze and barely saw a really small dot at the end. We had our phone lights on through the whole time. Once we made it to the end of the tunnel, it felt good, but heading back was definitely tiring. Towards the end, my mother took a picture of me from behind as we were ready to leave the tunnel. But a while later, when we got home and reviewed all the pictures, you can see a small green figure by my foot, a goblin. It seemed either like a small person or a small little boy, a goblin. But if you are interested in seeing this picture and might giving me some idea, feel free to email me."
Okay. Oh.
Timothy Lewis, February 14th, 2025, 8:13 p.m. When I was around 10, my family drove up there for the day to explore the area and take a hike in the tunnel. It was probably around May of 1966. Okay. This guy's like my dad. What a sick comment. Okay, I'm excited. The old town site still had some rotting, falling down timbers from the buildings. There was many artifacts you could dig up and find all around, like broken plates and mugs. We found a rusty wood-burning cook stove and even found a carved bone tobacco pipe.
That's sick. But like, that's probably historic. Like, that's actually an artifact.
My sister, cousin, and I decided to hike through the tunnel using a Coleman lantern. It was complete darkness without the lantern, but you could see the tiny dot of light from the opposite end of the tunnel.
Everyone's describing that. It makes me want to go there.
As we continued through the tunnel, the dot of light was growing in size. In the very center of the tunnel, there was a halfway marker that let the engineer know. When we were about a quarter of a mile away from the other side, my cousin noticed that our lantern had an issue where the mantle was falling off. It was still producing light, but we definitely did not want to continue without the light. So we almost ran the entire way back to the west entrance. The entire area had a feeling about it, like sadness, but it was an eerie sadness and a feeling of depression. My parents had brought lunch, and after we ate and recounted our scary experience in the tunnel over and over, my sister and I decided to take a hike down Tide Creek to see if we could find any unusual artifacts. While hiking in the creek for a ways, I saw something that caught my eye. There was something not natural lodged in the side of the creek in the dirt. It appeared to be the size of a shoe. I told my sister to stop, and she came back up to me to watch carefully as I dug around to find this like an archaeologist digging up a dinosaur bone. I finally freed the old shoe from its grave, only to discover it was a woman's shoe from the 19th century.
It can just like, you got the shoe ID vision. You just know that.
It was fragile, and when I held it up so my sister and I could take a closer look at it, it began to fall apart in my hands, only to reveal what was inside. It had the entire skeletal remains of the foot of the woman that was wearing it when she died. I immediately dropped it. We both screamed and ran away in fear. Who was she? Was she one of the missing dead that was not found? Did she reveal her shoe to us to let us know she was there? My sister and I talk about it to this day. Now we both feel that the woman was probably there with us in spirit and wanted us to find a part of her. Was she there? We may never know, but it makes a great story.
Okay, Timothy Lewis. Yeah, that is a great story. Wait, yeah, Josh, what total? August 2025. So, yeah, he's still around. Ghost of Moonville. This is written by Kirk DePeel, the Catman, on October 1993. That was last updated May 23rd, 2001. Okay.
Since this is the month of ghosts and goblins, I wanted to post the story of a railroad ghost known to many as the Moonville Ghost. I'm also giving you information on Moonville and the railroad. For those who are interested, the town of Moonville was located in the southeastern part of Ohio, which is now part of Zaleski State Park. Before I get started, I want to point out that this is not a legend, but a true story. The difference being that one is based on hearsay and the other is based on actual events that happened. Whether you believe in ghosts or not is your choice, and I'm not trying to change your views. What I am trying to say is that these people saw something. Whether it was a ghost, a natural phenomenon, or some other kind of explanation, it's up for you to decide. For the record, I believe in ghosts. I did see my father looking at me one night and about 1 month after he died. I have also put a great deal of time and effort sorting through all the stories on the Moonville Ghost. Most of these stories are very similar and come from what I consider reliable witnesses. And yes, there have been some stories I would have to question too. The story of the Moonville Ghost has appeared in the paper many times in the past, and I'm sure it will continue to do so in the future. One other point I wish to bring up is that this is not the only ghost known in the area. There are at least 2 other known ghosts in the Zaleski State Park. One watches over an old iron furnace where he met his death. The other is that of a prospector and his mule. Also something to keep in mind, a few years ago, southeastern Ohio was ranked as one of the top 5 areas in the world for witchcraft activity. The reason behind this was that this area is a focal point for tapping into the Earth's natural powers and communicating with the world beyond. The history of Moonville. In the late 1850s, the Marietta and Cincinnati Railroad was pushing west to reach Cincinnati. The owner, William T. Cutler, was having deep financial...
Oh my gosh. Sorry.
The owner, William P. Cutler, was having deep financial problems, and the railroad was looking for ways to save money. One of these ways came by the way of a gentleman named Samuel Coe. He persuaded railroad officials to make a trade. Instead of building north around Hope Hollow, he would let the M&C build through the property for free on one condition. That condition was that they would put the railroad where he wanted it to be. Samuel Coe had visions of using the M&C to haul out coal and clay that was on his property. When the railroad agreed, Coe began to open up some mines and Moonville came into existence. Moonville was never a big town. At its height,
How big was this dude's property?
Moonville was never a big town. At its height, there were probably never more than 50 or 60 people living there at one time. The map I have shows the location for 4 buildings. Reports show that the town had a schoolhouse, railroad depot, store, and a post office. The rest of the area was covered with various houses. Today, only foundations of the schoolhouse and the Moonville Cemetery remain. There was also one saloon, possibly 2, in the area, and people used to walk along the tracks to get there. The buildings were located on both sides of the railroad tracks, and just about 500 yards from the town was the Moonville Tunnel. Between the town and the tunnel, the railroad crossed a 50-feet-high trestle over Raccoon Creek.
An interesting note, Raccoon Creek is the longest creek in the world. A creek is defined as any channel of water being less than 100 miles long. At the time, the Raccoon was determined to be the only 99 miles long. Later, it was discovered to be over that, but there was too much red tape from the government to change its status to a river.
The Moonville Tunnel is only 50 yards long and has a slight curve to it. To save money, the tunnel was made very narrow and out of brick. The walls were only 3.5 yards on either side of the track, and the trains would go through that stretch at full speed. Also dangerous to the area were 4 trestles that were built to cross Raccoon Creek. They were built just wide enough for the track to be laid on, and most were quite long. Anyone caught in the middle of one had the choice of jumping to an almost certain death in the shallow Raccoon Creek or being hit by an oncoming train. Most froze and died. At least 5 to 6 people lost their lives between 1850 and 1920 to the trestles and to the tunnel. In 1986, a 10-year-old girl was killed when the CSX train hit her on the trestle. She was the last person killed, and ironically, it happened about 2 months after CSX abandoned the train line. In 1887, the M&C was bought out by the B&O. It became a vital part of the east-west line from Washington, D.C. to St. Louis. While the traffic on the railroad increased, the town of Moonville went the opposite direction. By the turn of the century, the coal and clay mines were closing and the town was dying. The last resident of the town was a family who left in 1947. By the beginning of the 60s, all the buildings were gone. If you drive by Moonville today, you can never tell there was a town there. Which takes us into the story of the ghost. And this is at the request of surviving relatives. All names have been left off. There have been many stories told about the ghost, or should I say ghosts. Many people are not aware of it, but there are at least 2 ghosts that haunt the Moonville area, along with a possible 3rd ghost. One is a well-known ghost that appears inside the tunnel, swinging a lantern while trying to stop the train. The other is a ghost that walks the tracks near Moonville, but on the other side of the tunnel. Here's the background on the little-known Moonville ghost. She walks the tracks alone. While this ghost is less known than the one that haunts the tunnel, it has been seen quite a few times in recent years. There are 2 different descriptions of this ghost. One is a shapeless entity, the other is that of a woman. Are they the same ghost or different? One report I have goes like this. One of the residents of Moonville was walking home along the tracks late one night. As he got close to Moonville, he noticed the ghost beside him. He described the ghost as someone who may have had a sheet over him. If he ran, this thing would run, and when he stopped, it would stop. After some time, the ghost took off over the bank. Later versions told of an older lady who walked the tracks and then disappeared. She has been seen as recently as 2 months ago. Since the tracks were pulled, hikers have taken advantage of the rail bed, and many have chosen to camp on it. As a result, the sightings of the ghost have increased. One couple I talked to said they were camping about a half mile from the tunnel on the railroad. It was a cloudy night and the area was very dark. About 11 p.m. they were in the tent when they saw something white go by the front of the tent. First they thought it was another camper, but then they realized this person made no noise. They both scrambled out of their tent to investigate. What they saw made them pack up and leave right away. Walking on the side of the railroad towards the tunnel was the white figure of a lady. She was in a turn-of-the-century outfit and appeared to be in her 40s. From her appearance, she was clearly not solid, but she did not give off any light because they couldn't see anything on the other side of her. When one of them yelled something at her, she turned and looked at them for a moment but never stopped walking away. In a minute, she was around the bend and gone. 2 people who lived in the area could be this ghost. One was a man who was murdered one night as he walked home alone along the tracks. It began when he got into a ballroom brawl with a couple of other men. Eyewitnesses say that he was very drunk and had trouble walking as he headed back towards Moonville. It is believed that the men who he was fighting with bushwhacked him along the tracks and murdered him, leaving his body on the railroad. Despite the fact that he had been run over, the coroner said that he was dead before the train hit him. His murderers were never found. The problem with this person being a ghost was the location. The problem with this person being the ghost was the location. While I have not found out where the murder took place, there is a good chance that the murder took place on the wrong side of the tunnel. It would depend on where he lived and where the attack took place the attack took place in accordance to the tunnel. While the other problem is some people have reported the ghost as being a woman, not just a shapeless spirit as in the first case. The other possible person was a lady who was hit by a train near Moonville. She was walking home from the town of Mineral, about 10 miles away, when a train hit her. This would have put her in the night.
This would have put her in the... Oh my god.
This would have put her in the right area, as she was only walking about 1 mile from Moonville Tunnel when she was killed. She is also the only woman in the area to have been killed by a train, except for the 10-year-old girl in the 80s. The rest were men. This occurred sometime around 1905.
He waits in the tunnel.
A fast-moving B&O freight train is heading west in the Moonville area. As the throttle is a rookie engineer, making only his third run on the line. It is around 11:30 on a July night, and the year is 1977. Up to now, everything has been normal and dull. But this changes as they approach the Moonville Tunnel. About 500 yards ahead, the engineer sees a figure of a dark man with a lantern. He is swinging it back and forth, trying to get the train to stop. As the rookie engineer prepares to put the train in emergency, he is stopped by the conductor in charge. The conductor has seen this many, many times before. He tells him in about 15 seconds he will understand. The train approaches the tunnel at about 50 miles per hour. The lights from the engine can now make out the full figure of a man, but something is wrong. The light appears to be going right through him. In an instant, the train is on him, and then the figure is gone. Right before their eyes, the man vanishes. There's no scream tonight, as there has been in the past. Sometimes there is, other times there is not. The train rolls over where the figure once stood and continues on. The rookie engineer is visibly shaken and will later ask his supervisor for a new route. It happens again and again. The Moonville ghost has taken its toll. And from that point on, that conductor blindly hit anybody standing on the tracks, waving a lantern. Just another ghost legend, a great script for a Halloween movie, wrong on both counts. I got this story from other B&O engineers as they waited for a meet on a siding that used to be east of Athens. And the Moonville ghost has been seen by more than just railroad workers. Other people have seen him too. Since the beginning of the century, he has appeared in the tunnel swinging his lantern. On some nights, he lets out a blood-curdling scream. But who is, or should I say who was, the Moonville Man? From the newspaper articles and eyewitnesses, the ghost is described as being black, about 8 feet tall, with a white beard. His eyes glisten like balls of fire, and he appears to be wearing a miner's hat. In one hand, he holds a lantern and is dressed in dirty overalls. Sometimes he appears quite often. Then it may be years before he is reported again. But did such a man exist? Believe it or not, the answer is yes, and here's the story. One night, about 1920, a group of men, some of them miners, other railroad workers, were playing cards in a shack not too far from the tracks. There was plenty of moonshine to drink, and as the night wore on, some of the men got pretty plastered. One of the men, for whatever reason, decided to leave the game and started walking down the tracks. He was exceeding drunk, and as he got into the tunnel, a train approached from the other side. Due to his condition, he wasn't thinking clearly and didn't try to run back out. Perhaps he was too drunk to. Instead, the man started swinging his lantern, I guess hoping the train would stop for him. 73 years later, and people are still thinking that way. As you may have guessed, he was hit and killed. Reportedly, he was buried in the Moonville graveyard. Since that time, people have seen this ghost. When Moonville was first settled, there was a black family that moved into the area. They come from Virginia as freed slaves, and it is reported that the wife was the daughter of a plantation owner. They had 3 children that grew up to work in the mines. One of them was killed in the 1920s by a train. The other location was, you guessed it, the Moonville Tunnel. Whether he worked for the mine or the railroad is unclear. The fact that he died in the Moonville Tunnel is clear. While writing this story, a coworker told me she and a group of friends had seen the Moonville ghost. It was sometime around 1979, and they had just walked through the tunnel to get back to their car. As they were leaving, she spotted a dark figure on the other side of the tunnel with a light. None of them wanted to see what was going to happen next. They hightailed it out of there. Many people have had the same experience. There's an excellent water hole on the other side of the tunnel, which I am told is bottomless. Apparently, a mine shaft near the creek collapsed one day and filled up with water. Water is very cold, even on hot days, leading many people to believe the hole is also being fed by an underground spring. I would not swim in that. I would not. Just a hole full of water, freezing cold, deep earth, water. No, there's definitely skeletons down there. Coming back, some would see the ghost as they approached the tunnel, others after they went through. In one case, a boy saved by the ghost. As he approached the tunnel, the ghost appeared and screamed. The boy got spooked, pardon the pun, but could not resist the opportunity. He ran no more, and then a few feet he saw the light of the train coming around the bend ahead. If he had kept walking, he would have been in the tunnel. He stepped off the track and turned, but the ghost was gone. To this day, he has never gone back. One more fact I wish to bring up before I end. Most of the people who have seen the ghost have not heard about him beforehand. Or so I am told. Many of them were students who had not lived in the area previously. Others just heard rumors of a ghost, but that was it. They never knew where the ghost was located. Keep in mind there are plenty of ghost stories to keep me going to next Halloween. So it's hard not to get confused or not believe. But those who see him, it leaves an impact. This is the legend of the headless conductor. Sightings of this ghost conductor who walks the track searching for his head go all the way back to the 1890s. It is rumored that more than a few trains have stopped near Moonville Tunnel by this conductor. And yet, this is the one ghost that I have very few facts on. The way he died is a matter of debate, as well as if he was really a conductor or a brakeman. Even his name is not known, and his description is fuzzy at best.
How do you know it's not the other ghost?
There are at least 3 stories of his death, and here they are. One is that he was having an affair with the wife of an engineer. When the engineer found out, he decided to get even. One night, as they were stopped on the tracks, the engineer asked the conductor to check something out or between the wheels of the locomotive. When the conductor stuck his head behind the wheels, the engineer moved the train forward, cutting off his head. Another story tells of a railroad worker who had been drinking heavily that night while the train sat on a siding. As the train pulled out, he decided to ride the train to the next meet by hanging on to the outside of a boxcar. He fell off in one of the 2 tunnels, and he was decapitated. I got another account of his death through October 1990 from Volume 24, Number 10 magazine called Highways, the official publication of the Good Sam Club. In this story, as the train left the station and gathered steam, the bloody head of the conductor rolled down from the roof and fell across the engineer's window. The train stopped immediately, and the crew was quickly dispatched to search for the body and the head of the conductor. No body or head was ever found, nor was there any blood along the tracks to indicate the conductor was killed. It seemed to have vanished in the night. Since his death, there have been a few newspaper articles written about him. In one of the articles I read, a B&O engineer reported seeing a man who was swinging a lantern inside the tunnel. Sound familiar? As the train came to a stop, the man, who was dressed as a conductor of the Marietta and Cincinnati Railroad but with no head, walked off the tracks and disappeared. This appearance was a few years before the man wearing a miner's hat was killed in the tunnel. Could this have happened? Did such a man die in the area? I know there have been railroad workers killed in the area, but what job they held and how they died is unclear. I personally believe many have confused this ghost with the Moonville ghost in Part 3. A number of times, he's described as being a dark figure, dressed as a conductor who swings a lantern in the Moonville area. And as mentioned in Part 3, it's unclear if the ghost with the miner's hat was a miner or a railroad worker. On the other hand, this ghost has been reported as walking on the tracks and waving a lantern in the tunnel before the other deaths I talked about earlier took place. Was this just popular folklore or stories based on true accounts? It's impossible to be sure. But who is to say that you can't have more than one ghost haunting a house or a railroad tunnel? And of course, this is what makes ghost legends so great to hear. It's always a mystery. There may be one eyewitness to this ghost. While taking a class this month called Haunted Athens, I ran into someone who had seen of the Moonville ghost. Here is his account on what happened on a warm summer night in 1979. Time was about 10 p.m., and a group of 6 teenagers were walking back to the car from the water hole. Some beer had been purchased that night, and a few of the people who had drank the beer were underage. As they got near the tunnel, one of them spotted a light following not far behind. The immediate concern was that this was the sheriff holding a flashlight who was trying to catch up to them. They had been making a lot of noise that night, so they had figured someone from one of the houses close by had called the police. Two of them decided to walk back and talk to the sheriff while the rest continued to the car. Their goal was to clear everything up with the officer and then meet the others at the car. One person who told me this story was the driver, and he continued on with the rest of his friends. As they got about halfway through the tunnel, he saw his friends go running past him. This caused everyone to run to the car. When they got there, his friends told him that there was no one carrying that light. A friend and him decided to head back to see what their friends had seen. Since he was the driver, he had not been drinking. I don't believe his friend had either. As they got closer, he said it looked like someone walking down the tracks with a lantern. However, they noticed the light was glowing, but not casting any real light. Once they got within 20 yards of the light, they could make out part of the outline of a lantern. It was also clear to see that no one was holding this light. At this point, the light stopped moving and started swinging back and forth. They both turned and ran as fast as they could to the car. As he was leaving, I asked if he saw what the light was, and he said, yes, it was in the tunnel, just swinging away. A few days after I talked to him, the story of the Mako light was posted to the list. I was surprised at the similarities. Could it be related somehow?
And then there's some more information.
In June of 1985, CXX announces that the St. Louis line between Cumberland and Cincinnati would lose its status as a main line. All scheduled trains were annulled between these points and rerouted to the Chicago line about 100 miles north of Athens. This added 10 to 24 hours to their travel time. The last freight train ran through the Moonville area on August 31st, 1985. Around June of 1988, 30 miles of track west of Athens and through Moonville were pulled up. Perhaps now the ghosts could rest in peace.
But he does say, Happy Halloween, everyone, from me and the Moonville Ghost. That was uploaded in October. It was written in October of 93 and was uploaded in May 23rd, 2001. Check this out. It's just, no way, there is more. Oh, I gotta bookmark this. Okay, yeah, this website is fucking sick. That was just one. Alright, I'm gonna have to call it there. This is a pretty long one, but it's gonna be a little bit late because it's currently 11 p.m. and it's supposed to be uploaded. The deadline is in an hour, so yeah, but to all of the loyal Two-Box broadcast listeners out there, this was a pleasure to make. I've been having a lot of fun making these videos, experimenting with some different stuff. This was all just reading these online, like,
Weird things, but gonna keep at it.
and
Yeah, thank you for watching. I appreciate it. And let me know what you think. What one was your favorite? How you think the music fits? All that stuff.
stuff.
What I should do next,
Do you know a scary story that? I don't know, we'll do it.
Okay?
Okay. Glad we came to an understanding there. Okay.
I was starting to sense a little bit of hostility in the room, and I just didn't.
Know if that was, me. I don't know if I did too much talking and not enough listening, this last hour. So,